Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Leather Chronicles, brought to you by ACES and the Leather Annex. I'm your host, Matthew Cary, and we have an excellent episode for you this evening with more coming up. Episode 3 will be on May 24th with Phil, Boy Meet Wolf, and Joshua Hightower, co-creators of the Next Generation concept and movement. Episode 4 will be on June 28th with Jay Wiseman, educator and author of SM 101, A Realistic Introduction. You'll be able to find past episodes on the ACES YouTube channel. Char will be posting the link. Our guest this evening is Pulse, a 25-plus year leather slave, passionate educator, and fierce advocate for Black male submission. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the Leather Chronicles.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I am doing
How's
fantastic.
everyone doing?
I believe everybody in the Zoom is doing fantastic as well. It is good to see you.
They sound good. Mom, I got rid of the porn star mustache.
Oh, you got rid of a stash? That would have looked good for this.
He didn't like it.
Oh, it would have looked good for this.
Yeah, mom didn't like it. She said it looked like it was. Well, yeah. Once upon a time, it would have been considered a cookie duster.
Oh, fun. All right, let's get right to it. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where is home?
Ohio, Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
Start off with an easy one.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Young Pulse. Before you found the community, what was life like?
Hectic. Yeah. For those that don't know, I'm a retired Air Force. I come out of Columbus. I went from there directly into the military. And 23 years later of gallivanting 40 plus states and 17 countries, a couple of war zones. Kind of running around the world enjoying myself, trying my best not to get thrown out of the military.
What did you do in the Air Force, if you could talk about?
That I can talk about?
Yeah.
Everything was centered around computers.
Okay.
When I wasn't playing football or lifting weights, I was in somebody's computer room working on somebody's mainframe, or later on building the small PCs. But most of my time was spent on the large mainframes, working all kinds of crazy secret projects.
So you kept the Air Force running, computer-wise? At your end of it, anyway.
I got to watch all the pretty lights as we were doing fun things. One of the real cool things that I got to do was the moon mission. I was one of the computer operators when they went to the moon.
Oh, I need to hear a little bit about that. That sounds very interesting.
Just boring. We just kept the machine running while they were gallivanting around through space.
Well, that's a pretty big part of history.
Well, there's, we all had our fingers in there.
You had a little part of it.
I had a little piece. I got a patch.
You've got a patch from it. That's awesome. Now, you said you played football in the Air Force?
Yes.
How does that work? Now, I know you have the Air Force Academy, which would be college football. But is there other?
Back in the day, we were equivalent to a semi-pro team. Actually, we played a lot of local teams, and then overseas, American-style football was really starting to take hold, and all of the bases had teams. So, especially in Europe, all of the bases had teams. So they had a league, and we traveled around playing ball against other teams, other bases, both Army, Air Force, Marines. You never, ever, ever want to play American-style football against rugby people.
No, I would imagine not.
That was like watching. I'm just lost my doohickey.
Yes, but you're showing us a very good-looking shirt.
Oh yes, I like my shirt. This is a cool shirt. It came in the mail one day along with a sweatshirt, which I promptly lost. But it happens. When I go to Evansville and I have a shirt that looks really neat, mom goes, "Mine," and it disappears. But going back to football, yeah, we we had an intercontinental league, and so we traveled around playing football.
That sounds
It was
awesome.
part of our job. I actually got time off to go play ball.
What position did you play?
Me?
Yeah.
I hate offense, but they kept putting me on offense.
Because you were good at it, probably.
I had good hands and I had good speed. And so I played tight end. And then from lifting weights, I got big. I was 265 pounds, 270 pounds, with wide receiver speed.
Wow.
I could get down the road. I could run 100 meters in 10 seconds.
Oh my, that's world class speed almost. That's a lot.
Not quite, but
right there.
I was up in there. For 40 yards, nobody, my reaction time for 40 yards, I was the fastest or second fastest on most of the teams I was on.
That's awesome. I had no idea. That is so fun to hear.
It was funny because one of the teams I played on, I was the gray hair, for anybody who's curious, started when I was 13. And so I'm 27, 28 years old, and we're playing. And I always wear the knit cap, And I was racing some kid who was 6 or 7 years younger than me, but he was a speedster. And he looked at me and was like, yeah, right. And we were doing time drills. And me and this kid were step for step. And he was like, you're not supposed to be that fast. And I'm like, what can I say? I've been running track. I ran track all through high school. So I hadn't lost any, I'd only lost a step or two. So I was still pretty quick compared to a lot of them.
That's really fast at 27, 28, if you're keeping up with young speedsters.
Oh, yeah. And it was fun because I got to shock a lot of them when I was playing ball because they're looking for, the lumbering, lineman, and I would be zipping through. I had one quarterback, he was screaming at his line because I could just get through there. Plus I was strong. And this kid and I got, we got into a grudge match and we were racing and got to and we were both winded and we were like, all right, for all the marbles, here you go. And you know how you need that extra boost? I snatched my hat off to get that extra step. And the coach came running over because he'd been bragging about he was the oldest thing out there. And he looked at my gray hair and says, how old are you really? And I said, don't worry about it, coach. You're the oldest one out here, and trotted off. And that kid and I went out and had fun later on that evening. But it was fun. Then they tied us into the rugby, one of the Aussie rugby
Australian rules football.
Australian people came. They had people all over Europe. They had a team. And it's like, well, we don't have, there's no rugby people. Hey, put on some pads. Not a good idea. They were like crazy. A bunch of 10-year-olds. You mean I can do this and not get hurt? They were breaking equipment in the game. Worst game I ever played. Hardest game I ever played.
I bet, because they're not afraid to hit with no pads.
Oh yeah, they hit. They're breaking bone without pads.
Right.
With pads, they're breaking bones and equipment.
Oh wow,
that was hilarious.
Now
painful.
A little birdie told me that while you were in the Air Force, you had something to do with the Air Force Gospel Choir.
That little birdie talks too much. But anyway, the Air Force was, how can I say this nicely? Not exactly, even though it was legally segregated, it wasn't.
Right.
I almost got thrown out of the Air Force over a racial sensitivity class because, some of those old heads that had been around for time, since time began. It's always been this way, and right. People need to. And I jumped up in the middle of the class and told this guy what he could do with himself.
They generally don't like that, but I'm going to bet you were right.
Yeah. And so we had a chaplain who was really cool, and the man had a good whoop. He was cool beans, and he was also interested because there were a lot of Black people on base that weren't coming to the chapel.
Okay.
It was boring in there. And so we were, I forget how we bumped into him. I don't know if he came, I think he came to us, came to a couple of us. And he said, how can I get more participation from, from the black guys on bass? We said, have church. He said, and he kind of looked at us, but he understood because, he didn't exactly fit the typical boring, dry Air Force chaplain kind of thing. The man could preach. He was a Baptist minister from, I forget where Benziger was from, but he was a Baptist minister, Southern Baptist minister.
Okay. Yeah.
If that means anything to anybody. And we said, have church, with some music. And he says, well, we don't have any music. We're stuck to the hymnal. But what he did say was, bring me some music and we'll make it work. And we said, we can do better than that. I know so-and-so, he can sing. So-and-so can, we got a piano player. We got a drummer. We got an organist. And we got some guys who can sing. Not me, Mom. Anyway, so we got together. We started calling home. Aretha Franklin's album had just come out. She had done a thing with her father called Amazing Grace that had some fantastic songs on it. There was also Nikki Giovanni, Professor Nikki Giovanni, doing her poetry over gospel. Not exactly something you want to put on Armed Forces Radio Network, but we did. She has a piece called Peace Be Still that is phenomenal. So we put together probably 10 songs done from Amazing Grace and Nikki Giovanni and some others, and did a dress rehearsal for the chaplain, and he loved it. We didn't know at that moment that he was going to put us on Armed Forces Radio.
Wow.
And yeah, but the choir, we told everybody we're going to have a black choir and we're going to have a gospel service. So they did the typical, standard thing. And they said, after this, we're going to have church. And most of the folks showed up. There was 440 men, about 2/3, about half was black. There was 200 odd black males, only 20 women, military. But they came to church that Sunday and the church was packed. So we, the best we could do was, we're on a military thing. So we came out. I've got pictures somewhere. We come marching in and we had church that day.
So you churched up his church.
We churched up his church and he stepped up to the game and preached a really good sermon.
I bet.
After that, the word spread that that base had a gospel choir. And they said, hey, if we give you a bus, will you travel? So we ended up going through Korea, doing different churches, and they would have a gospel service wherever we went. I went back 10 odd years later, and the choir that we started was still in existence. That made me feel good.
Is it still around?
I don't know. I haven't been to Korea since the Olympics, since they had the Olympics. Okay. When I was there, it was still around, but they had started shutting down some of the bases. The last time I went in mid-90s, it was still there then.
Wow.
I haven't talked to anybody since then. Not over there.
That's
anyway.
That's awesome though. That's awesome. And you speak Korean, right?
I used to. I was fluent in it. I did 5 tours over there, which comprised of about 8 years. My daughter is half Korean. And so I was good at picking up languages, but in 8 years time, you learn things. But I was quite fluent with Korean for the longest time. then afterwards, I remember some words and phrases, please and thank you and stuff like that. But I was good enough that when I had my family over there, I took my son and my sister, who I adopted, we all went to Korea, along with my wife, and got a house downtown off base. On base, I couldn't, there was no place for them on base. I was in a secure facility. I had 7 different cipher locks that I had to remember to get into my office. So we got us a place down. They said, hey, I was of a certain rank. We'll get you a place downtown. So we got a compound. One of the Navy guys was rotating back to the States with his family. So I got his house and his maid. We paid her $40 a month. So we were rich Americans. She went home bragging that the rich Americans were paying her all this money. But she took care of the house. She cooked for the kids. My Korean was good enough that she would speak to me in Korean. Otherwise, she wouldn't speak.
Very cool. Now, with all this running around the world and playing football, how did you find the community?
I went to Germany.
Okay.
And at the time, England was rocking and rolling. Remember Skin 2 magazine? I had 4 or 5 of the original Skin 2. They were slicks at the time. And my father always had the box of books hidden in his van. And I looked through them, I found the box of books. But because he couldn't keep them in the house. I found them in the work van. I went through them and it was like, okay, this is what everybody's all excited about. He had a deck of cards, however, that was hidden in his nightstand. And that deck of cards was off the chain. There was every conceivable kink and fetish and sexual position for a 52 deck of cards. Yeah, I learned a lot from that 52 deck of
Sounds
cards.
like it. I'd like to see that deck of cards.
I wish I still had it, but when he passed away first, and of course that was the first thing to go. But it was even by today's standard, that deck was nasty.
I like it.
So I would, I'm 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, coming into my whatever adolescence.
You were
learn
too
how
young
to get
for
into
that deck
stuff.
of cards.
I went through his book, nothing. And then one day he was cleaning his gun. And I saw the deck of cards sitting there, and I'm like, that looks interesting, because he didn't have it covered. And the that first card was like, because back then, if you went into a liquor store, they always had that magazine section back in the back, right, behind everything, behind the swinging doors, where only supposedly adults went. So, I was a decent sized kid. They didn't question me going back there. And I'd look at all the stuff and kind of go, My parents were strict, but progressive enough that we didn't have to go to the street to find out where babies came from. They explained it to us. So when everybody else is all fascinated, we're like, health class, been there, done that.
Right.
But that deck of cards called me like ringing a bell. Screwdriver, popped open the nightstand, and then when they weren't around, that deck of cards got a lot of work out. So fast forward from that to the magazines like Dominant Mystique and the things that were the slicks of the day. I still have one of the pictures of that. I walked in one day and I'm looking through the usual, Playboy and Penthouse never fascinated me. I walk in one day and there's this leather dame. She's got a bullwhip in her hand. She's dressed head to foot in leather with a mask. And she's got a strap on that's kind of sticking up like this. And I went, oh my God. And I stood there and sweated for about 15 minutes looking at this magazine. I got to know more about this. They're doing the at the time, people were very careful about the kink, about being kinky. You know, it was all, you know, Playboy was considered risque. But then I found out all these other magazines that were out of there. So fast forward to that, they sent me from Ohio to Los Angeles, to the Mojave Desert. You know, you're up on the desert, there's no joy up there. You go downtown LA, they got nude bowling. They got topless bowling. So we're going, ooh. So LA was just a hotbed. I come back from California to Ohio. I get to spend about 9 months there. And they bounced I had a restriction from the job I had before I went into service. I had a restriction for leaving the country that the military could not break. I work for Atomic Energy Commission, and the military could not send me overseas because of the job I had. As soon as that restriction expired, bye-bye. You know, I had re-enlisted to get my home base, and, you know, I got my family moved and settled in, and they said, you're going to Vietnam. And I said, I don't want to go now. They said, you're going to Vietnam. 45 days later, I was on my way to Vietnam, where anything that you've heard, read, thought about Vietnam, put it on steroids.
Doesn't touch it.
It doesn't even, there's only one movie that's even close. And it's a crazy movie, but there's only one movie that's close, and that's Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
It was it boggled the imagination, and I've got a good imagination. Anything you wanted, thought of, considered was in downtown Saigon that you could get for pennies. You know, we didn't make that much, but when you can get it for less than $1, you can get laid for less than $1. You know, and get anything you wanted. I mean, to the point that this is gonna be on YouTube. I'll have to be good. You could get anything, anything that you thought of. A lot of guys did. You know, you go downtown to get sex, no biggie. But then there were girls who would do pretty much anything. I'd already seen the magazines, and I wanted to see how far you could take it. I didn't, but there was things available. There was stuff available.
So if you were getting it for less than $1, then $10 was certainly too buku.
No, $10 was a whole apartment for a month. When I left there, Nixon was lying to everyone and saying he was pulling the troops out.
There's a shock.
And but when they actually did finally start to move people around, rather than send us home because they thought the war was going to blow back up again, they loaded us up. They said, it was a rumor on Sunday, we're leaving. Monday, they said, yeah, you don't start packing. Tuesday, they said, we're leaving, and they started putting stuff away. Wednesday, I was standing in line as they ran my stuff down a conveyor belt and packed on the conveyor belt. It was 95 degrees, 95% humidity, and we left there in jungle fatigues and landed in Tokyo where it was 30 degrees.
Wow.
And God knows what kind of humidity. We unpacked the duffel bags that we had already packed to make sure we didn't have any contraband. And then we landed in Korea where it was 12 inches of snow, 17 degrees, and we were still in our jungle fatigues.
Wow. That's some travel and some temperature shock.
Yeah, that part.
And then you weren't dressed for it.
And then we weren't dressed for it. They rounded us up, they gave us a dorm, and we were like sitting in the dorm shivering. Next morning, we all ran out the gate. You know, they paid us. So we ran out the gate and bought jackets and things like that until we got to our base. We bought winter gear because we didn't have any. We were still in jungle stuff. And so, yeah. And then you get to Korea, and the cost of living is a little higher, but the won was trading at 3,000 to $1, something like that, 3 or 4,000 won to $1. If you're buying it, I think it ultimately went up to 5,000 before I left, to $1.
Wow.
You could do, suits cost a 3-piece tailor-made suit cost me $50.
Wow. Okay.
Shirts. When when I came back after Korea, I had a bunch of football because I was still a big fan of football, of the NFL. So I had a shirt made of every NFL team. I had jerseys for every NFL team. They cost me $5 a piece to get them made. And I showed the guy pictures and they stitched them up. And I'm at home shopping, and the guy said, "Oh, that jersey is really nice. Where'd you get it from?" I said, "I had it made." And he started cursing at me. If you did want to tell me, you didn't have to tell me. And I literally had it made. All of them.
Because everything was so inexpensive.
Because, everything was so cheap. Like I said, our paychecks weren't that big, but over there they were.
But with the conversion rate, it went a long way.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So like Vietnam to Tokyo to Korea.
Yeah.
You mentioned
come
Germany.
back to the state. Come back to the States. I went to St. Louis, just outside of St. Louis. There's a base called Scott Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm.
I had been so many bases by then. They looked at me and said, "Sarge, unpack. You're not going anywhere for a while." I'm like, I can pretty much go wherever I want. I can pull those strings. And they said, "We're pulling the strings back. You're not going anywhere. You've already covered." By then, I had been in 8 or 9 years, 8 years. And I'd been to as many bases as the average person would go to in a career. And they said, "You're not going anywhere." So I unpacked, and the base they landed me at was Peyton Place. Look it up for people who are too young. They had East St. Louis, which is, the bars were open 23 hours a day.
Right.
They would close them, sweep them out, open them back up again. 23 hours a day, East St. Louis. The bars in St. Louis closed at 2:00, and there was clubs everywhere. Hot and cold running everything, including kink. But I had to be on the down low because of my jobs.
Right.
So I was like very careful, but let's just say the companionship was frequent.
Okay.
Okay. And I learned some things, and I was a bartender and I was a DJ. So I got to see stuff going in and out of the clubs. They knew me. If I wasn't DJing, I was tending bar on bass, and I knew where all the hot spots were. I was working one night, and the lady walked up and said, I had tried topping at that point because it seemed like the thing to do because other guys were getting away with it. And I was like, And back then spanking that was the big one. If you got to spank somebody, you were rolling.
When are we talking? Give me a time frame.
Late 70s going into early 80s.
Okay.
And so, by then I traveled around enough. I had little toys I picked up at different places. Just junk, just absolute junk. But it was fun to have it hanging on the wall for conversation pieces. You're not going to do any damage with it, but, things I'd seen in the magazine. Hey, I can get this flogger for $5. Why not? So I had stuff. And people would approach me that would come to the house to play cards. You got that stuff hanging over there. You went through my bedroom? Well, the other bathroom was full. You went through my bedroom. because it's on the back of the door. You're not going to find it unless you go through the bedroom. Yeah, but can I borrow that? No. Go get your own. You know, and I said, well, can we talk about it? Oh, no, we can't talk about it. No, 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 no. Black folk don't do that. Yeah, they do. Y'all just don't want to talk about it. You just said you wanted to borrow it. What were you going to do? Go take it home and throw it out, or go take it home and use it? Conversation stopped at that point. It usually stopped at that point. But for the longest time, couldn't find anybody, except I thought it was, other than because I hadn't gone to Europe yet. Couldn't find anybody to talk about it. Okay, so these are just fantasy books at that point. They're like, okay, you got pictures of all this stuff, but nobody's doing this really. Except that they were, because I left there and went to England and Germany. And the whole world opened up, because they were having Skin 2 magazine was having parties, dances. There was stuff going on in the back rooms, but I mean, there were fetish balls. And you know, people came out, and I mean, first time I saw all of that in real life, it took me a minute to get my chin off the ground.
And this is UK or Germany or both?
Both. UK first. One of the guys I worked for, excuse me, he wanted a Mercedes. And so he wangled because back then you could, if you knew the right people and pulled the right strings, you could get your assignments. He wanted to get a Mercedes. He pulled some strings, got himself an assignment from England to Germany. And he knew of my wishes, some of the things that I had wanted to try that I hadn't done yet, especially dominant women. And he'd seen some of the magazines. And then they came along with a new computer system. And he said, hey, we're doing training on this new box. I was the boss of the shop because he left and I got promoted into his job. Come on over, we'll train you. The first thing he did, after we checked in, we went to dinner, went to a nice guest house and had a phenomenal dinner. Drives me out to this 4-story building that's kind of, it's there, but you don't notice it, but it's like there, and pulls up.
Now, where are we at? What?
We're in Germany. We're in Kaiserslautern.
Okay.
And so we walk up these flight of stairs, and I'm looking, and I'm like, this ain't nothing but a hotel. Just Hooker Hotel. Because the military at that point was building compounds for GIs to kind of go get their rocks off so they wouldn't go downtown and disturb the populace. So I'm like, oh, it's just Hooker Central. I said, if you think I'm coming down here, he said, just wait. We walked up 3 flights of stairs and he knocks on a door. Standing there was blonde hair, blue eyes, 6-inch spikes, easily thigh-high boots, head to foot leather down. And she looked at me and my chin's moving, nothing's coming out, nothing intelligible is coming out. And I'm looking at this woman and I'm going, oh my God. She has the bullwhip in her hand. And she just kind of gives me that sneer and goes, you're not ready. And just bam, slams the door in my face.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
They're collapsed on the floor. My buddies and I are collapsed on the floor. They are collapsed on the floor. And I'm standing there with my mouth hanging open. They're collapsed on the floor laughing. It's like, we thought you were going to jump in there. I'm like, maybe with a little preparation, I would have considered it. But that lady had a bullwhip in her hand. Yeah. And they said, you got all them in your magazines. Magazines, real.
Right.
No magazine has ever beat me. So after that, we went out, went drinking, and had a good time. But then, after I'd been over there for, I think we were over there 45 days.
I was gonna say, how long before you went back?
Not
wasn't
long. Not long. Came back, did some training, figured out a way to go back over to Germany. When I went the second time, I had a car, and we got to drive, because driving from Germany through Luxembourg into Paris, easy peasy. It's, I've got my ID card. Once you at that point, you flash your ID card, then, the military was, unless you're an asshole, excuse my French, they would just look at you and go, oh, okay. And then they'd wave you on through. No border except for Berlin was closed to us. We could just go. My then spouse got shipped to Brussels and went over to see her. We had broken up by then. She had gotten divorced. So I used the time driving back and forth and exploring. One of my buddies had a car, and he had fog lights on his car, and he called it frog finders, because we would drive down the road, and the women were walking the road, not the street. They're walking the road. And when your fog light is turned at a 45-degree angle, them shiny pants that they wore kind of sort of lit up.
So the fog lights weren't for fog.
He called them frog finders, not fog finders.
So most of us have discovered the community in one particular place. You're just all over the world.
I was learning as I flew. I'm still young enough to be adventuresome. So, when it's, hey, let's go here, hey, let's go there. And then I was exploring, trying to find just how far I could take it.
Right.
Because at that point, I'm just looking. I'm in full voyeur mode, trying to see. The fetish parties were parties. I wasn't well known enough in Europe or in England to get invited to any of the back rooms or anything like that. But I'm walking or riding up and down the street, to some of those places. And in England, it was the approach was different. In the United States, it was hush, 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 hush. First time I went to the Noose in New York, I had to wait to be buzzed in. In England, you just stroll in. You could get boots made, you could get fetish gear made, you could pick up fetish gear hanging on the rack. And then they would wear it almost as streetwear, for real. It wasn't seen as the hush hush that the U.S. put on them.
They didn't have the same taboo
than the average American. Exactly. So, I'm seeing all of this stuff coming, Sadie Stern magazine and, things like that. I mean, I'm watching it live and in color. So that didn't do anything but kind of get me fired up to come back to the States and see what I could find in the U.S. Another trip to Korea, Thailand and Cambodia, which was they have Asian Black people. If nobody's ever told you, there are Asians who are Black that look African, except for the fact that they have straight hair and slanted eyes. Cambodians and some of the Thai people that they don't show you in the newsreels are Black. I ran into some of them and I went, oh, wait a minute. Can we talk? Like I said, I picked up languages fairly easy. Thai is a little harder, but the Cambodians spoke a lot of English because of the presence in Vietnam. They still had people over there. A lot of them spoke English. Yeah, down the rabbit hole farther.
Which rabbit
Farther
hole?
down farther down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Wait, which particular rabbit hole was this?
Learning more about kink and things that wouldn't be done in the proper bedroom.
You can elaborate a little more than that, can't you?
You said it's going on YouTube. No.
You can elaborate a little further. We'll bleep it if it needs more than that.
I was learning new stuff that I had seen in some of the magazines and on my father's deck of cards.
Oh, we were into the nasty deck of cards territory now.
Yes, that part. I can I do this? Can you do that? Sure. I can say this on this is safe.
Don't censor yourself. We'll censor you.
To the point that later on, I stopped liking blowjobs. You couldn't, there was no.
You have to elaborate on that one.
Okay. No matter where you went over there, okay, through Asia, that was the easiest thing to get.
Oh,
no matter where you were, in the theater, walking up and down the street, back alley, you could get a blowjob at the drop of a hat, any hat. And after seeing some of the things that they would do, it just kind of went, no, I like this and I don't want it to fall off later. Okay. Because they had diseases. They'll tell you that it doesn't exist, but that's a bunch of bullshit. They had diseases that you could catch that they at the time couldn't cure. They can do it now, but guys got shipped off or just disappeared.
Oh wow.
They would catch that stuff that they couldn't cure, they couldn't fix. Nope, not me. I liked my body. I took care of my body. I'm only going to put it in certain places that I know it's going to come back to me, other than maybe a shot or two. No. So, yeah, going through those countries, I learned a lot to the point that it was, like I said, the military was building in parts of Korea. There were compounds that the military had built, complete with bars, restaurants, and women. For the right money, you could get anything you wanted.
Okay.
Almost anything you wanted. I won't say anything, but almost anything.
So you've picked up a little bit here, a little bit there,
all over. Yeah, like I said, 17 countries. You learn things, and with the dollar being as strong as it was, remember that Margaret Thatcher, the British PM, she got pissed because at one point the dollar and the pound were almost equal. And we put Audi and Volkswagen, just the military, put Audi and Volkswagen 8 months behind because we were buying so many German cars. And with the exchange rate.
Yeah.
The mark, the pound, all of that, we put them behind. We put a lot of British companies. We were buying so many vehicles and shipping them back because it was like $1.25 to $1.25 to a pound or something. It was really almost 1 to 1.
Significant. Okay.
Oh yeah.
What was out of the 17 countries, kink wise, what was your favorite?
Korea, because I kept going back. I went to 5 different bases in Korea. Korea is my favorite. A close second would be Thailand because they were so nice, so innocent, so much fun, and the food is just delicious. And the people are cool. We were over there on exercises, and of course, I'm in the Air Force, and I'm a senior NCO, so I don't have to sleep out there in a tent. But then meanwhile, there's Army guys out there, and they're sleeping on rocks and sleeping bags. We're in a 4-star hotel. By then, I had kind of sort of learned my way around, and we had a driver and a van. So I got to talking to the girls that were working the hotel, looking for the fun places to go. What can we do here? What can I do there? How far can I push this? And I got to know one of the guides well enough that she took me home to her apartment. She was paying what she paid for a month is what we were paying per night on a hotel. About $24, $25 exchange rate. That was what her apartment cost her a month. And we were paying it the military was paying it, but that's what we were paying for a night. So they just knew we were supremely rich. So I'm riding through Chiang Mai, Thailand on the back of her little 50cc Honda, 6 foot, 265 pounds, 4'11", 90 pounds. And I'm riding behind her on her bike, and she took me pretty much everywhere.
So when you get back to the States, where do you land?
When I get back to the States, actually, Langley, Hampton, Virginia.
Okay.
I came back to Hampton, which, it was like Sleepy Town, USA at the time. They were only Hampton, Virginia Beach, and all of that hadn't blown up like it has now. So in the wintertime, there's nobody around. So you invent things. There weren't any kink events that I could find at the time. There were some folks, kind of hanging around. So I started running back and forth to New York, DC, because I knew that New York was still blowing it up. So I would jump in the car, drive to New York, hang out for the weekend, and then go back.
What time frame are we in now?
You're in mid-90s now.
Okay.
Early mid-90s. And New York was rocking and rolling. They were doing stuff. I didn't get in some of the places that Mom got into, but going down to the Village was an education in itself. You go through Greenwich Village and you go from one fetish store to another fetish store to something else going on down here, plus the jazz clubs and all of that. It was a continuing education.
What clubs were you hanging out at? What were your spots?
I don't remember.
Don't remember anymore.
I don't remember. I have no clue. I hadn't quit drinking at that point. And I didn't drink to excess, but I could hold my own. I would just go places and do stuff. Like I said, first time I went to I had heard about the Noose and what's the place? Purple Passion. There was a lot of fetish, there were fetish stores and stuff that, I didn't know anything. I'm just wandering. Didn't know anyone. I'm just wandering.
I was gonna say you didn't know anything. It sounds like you've got the world tour exclusive education. Anyone makes more sense.
I kicked out my battery thing. I didn't know anyone in New York City, not enough to jump into the middle of somebody's fetish ball or party or whatever.
Right, because you were running up from the DC area.
I didn't know anyone in DC other than, no, that's not true. I had a couple of friends, but they were more on the straight side. They were yeah. DC was no.
No, I was asking.
They were just drunk and disorderly in DC.
I was just asking you. Sound like you didn't know a lot of people in New York because you were driving up from the area. You were in Virginia.
I would just
making trips.
What we used to do in Chicago. Go find the clubs and just find out where they're partying and go have some fun. If I fell into something that was fetishy, it was by accident. You know,
Okay.
I had read about a lot of the clubs and things that were going on, you know, like Hellfire and all of that. But to say that I stumbled into any of those places on purpose, no, I went there looking, trying to find it. Once I moved from Hampton to DC, then I started learning some of the stuff like Black Rose and Bess and things like that. Started going to some of the classes. You know, now we're in the mid late 90s.
Okay.
And you know, I started going to the Baltimore Education Society. It's BESS, but it's Bess. They were doing regular classes, so yeah, I would go to the classes, and that's how, you know. And then at that time, Black Rose was jumping.
Right.
Black Rose had the hotel in New Carrollton that had its own. You know, they would take over the convention center and the hotel.
I never made it, but that was about all. That was a lot of what you heard in the early or the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
Was Black Rose this or Black Rose
Oh
that.
yeah, Black Rose was, because that's where I met Ivor Lee, BG. She was one of the few Black people that I had met that were openly kinky, because she worked a lot of the clubs and the front desk, you know, getting people in and out and kind of meet and greet kind of thing. And then Sir Cliff, he was, you know, he would be inside, you know, kind of talking people around. He's still around. His son, he's pretty much, you know, taking care of his son now. But back then he was hanging out at Black Rose and their events and stuff like that. When he found out that, hey, you know, there's another Black man here, he scooped me up and started running me around, which is where I ran into Lady Z at one of their not fetish, yeah, one of their flea markets.
And is this the path that leads us to Black Rose, or I'm sorry, BlackBeat?
Yes.
Tell me about, because you were involved with one of the founders.
With Z.
Okay.
Lady Z.
And then you were involved in helping to put it on. Go ahead.
She and I were together for a couple of years prior to that. But what we were finding out was there were pockets of people all doing pretty much something parallel. We're looking for, we weren't trying to separate ourselves from anyone. But when you're walking to a fetish event like Black Rose or Bess or one of those things, the first time, not the first time, but one of my trips through Black Rose, one of the Black Rose events, there were a couple of Black male dominants who I don't remember their names. And I'm meeting people who would look at me and go, you know, sir, and start calling me master and all this. I'm like, whoa, hold it. You know, I'm a sub. And they would look at me all kinds of sideways. No, all the Black men we know are master so-and-so or sir so-and-so or whatever.
So
and I'm
therefore,
like, no,
so therefore you have to be.
Yeah, therefore you have to be because you're a Black male. And I said, no. At that point, I kind of knew the terminology and, you know, no, I'm a submissive. We wouldn't know what to do with you. We would not know what to do with you.
What would you do with any other male submissive?
Yeah, immaterial. They just look at me and go, I wouldn't know what to do with you. And a couple of them were afraid to be a Black man.
I mean, I can kind of see where that comes from, but
yeah.
And one of the questions
fact that I'm in a fetish event with whip swinging and all of that. The first time I saw, it was a dominant out of Pittsburgh, Irene Boss, and she loved bullwhips. And by then I had become fascinated. It always had been a thing because my father was used to swing a bullwhip, not fetishy, but in a correction stand. You know, he knew how to crack one. So I'm standing there now. All of this time, I've been watching these leather doms, you know, with pictures of these women standing there with a bullwhip. Now here's a woman standing there, and she's got this guy in the pillory, and she is lighting him up with about an 8, maybe a 10-foot bullwhip in red. That's a red one. I'd never seen a red whip at that point. And every time she hit this dude, she lift him up on his feet, bring him up on his toes. And I'm standing there. I don't know whether to just
Me next. Me
yeah.
next.
Well, see, that's the point. I don't know whether I want to volunteer to be next or run.
You wanted to be next, Pulse. Don't fib to
No,
me.
because she's lifting this man with this bullwhip at the end of this thing. Okay, so I'm going to these events, and as I'm meeting people, because we go up to Boston to the fetish flea market, and things of that nature. Now I'm meeting people from other areas, and the theme was always the same. You got folks that are wandering around looking for other kinky Black folk, and we like being a part of their event, but it would be really nice if we could have our own for a lot of reasons. We play different. We respond, the music is different.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you. I have a question, and since you've brought it up,
Okay.
how can dungeons? What can dungeons do with music that would make it more inclusive and welcoming? I hear that a lot. Yeah, everybody talks about the music in dungeons.
Uh-huh.
You're a DJ. You've DJ'd this stuff.
Yeah.
Help us with just give me some tips.
It's the way that, and I'm going to skip past the hippity hop rap stuff because I'm not a fan. Okay. I'm talking just strictly R&B music, soul music, if you will. If the groove is good, the groove is good. Duke Ellington said it best. There's only two kinds of music, good and bad. I break it down a little bit different. There's the shit you're going to listen to and the stuff you are not going to listen to. Okay. And we, I don't care how you break it down, but throughout history, the music has been a constant through all the cultures, through all of our cultures, through Africa. Okay. This tribe will have this kind of music. That person, these folks will have that kind of music. You go to Greece, they got different kind of music. You go to Egypt, they've got another kind of music. Every place you go, there is the music that is a connector. Okay. Whether you can understand the words or not, you can feel that beat. Okay. The one constant is the drums.
Mm-hmm.
Across the board, everybody responds to the drums, whether they speak the language or not. Everybody understands that drum beat, that bass line.
The rhythm is what gets you moving.
The rhythm is what gets you moving.
Right.
If it's got you moving, then you're feeling it and you're feeling the music. Miss Lash out of Chicago was the first dominant that I had ever seen dance while she's beating somebody's ass. Okay. It's got you moving. You're standing there and the whips are cracking and the paddles are moving, but you are feeling not just the essence of the atmosphere, but you're feeling the music. Because if the music is jacked up, the play is going to be messed up. Okay. You're not going to get that. High is the wrong word, but that's the closest analogy I can think of. You're not going to get that feeling. Okay.
The energy.
I listen to all kinds of music. Like I said, as a DJ, I listen to all types of music, even country and Western. There's some country and Western songs that are just absolutely wonderful. Okay. But you can feel that bottom end of it. You can feel that groove.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Same thing with rock, same thing with, like I say, soul, R&B, all of that. For folks who go to make sure the music is something that you can listen to. It can't be a bunch of guys people, not guys. Can't be a bunch of people that walked up on stage that act like they didn't know each other 15 minutes before that, and they're up there banging on instruments. If it sounds like you're stretching cats, no. Okay.
Stretching cats.
It's gotta have that. It's gotta have that vibe, whether it's classical, rock, R&B, country, whatever. It's gotta have that vibe. It's gotta have that if it's got that, where you're going to tap your toe, or your body's moving a little bit, that.
So you would agree with me if you walked into a dungeon and heard Enigma, you'd go, oh, not again.
Did you know Fraser Bockford, the guy who was responsible for the Crucible, the original Crucible?
No.
Okay. Fraser had Fraser would do, he was also a singer, and he would go around town doing small gigs with a trio or a quartet of guys that he was friends with. And Fraser had that really deep voice, but Fraser could also play, and people didn't realize that he was quite the musician. So the Crucible ordinarily would have a decent soundtrack. When you go to Paddles in New York, Paddles was an entirely different crowd it was an entirely different vibe, a different crowd. So when we would go up there and go to New York to their munch, and Paddles wasn't that big of a club, that big of a dungeon. It was a decent sized dungeon, but it wasn't that big of a dungeon. When 50 of us have been to the munch and we show up at the doorstep, we're changing the vibe. I always had, when I was, the first time I went, Z said, don't you have some tapes in the car? Yes, ma'am. Go get a couple tapes. We're going to change this. And how she did it, I don't know. But next thing you know, Marvin Gaye is on the speakers and people are jamming,
So Motown, R&B, Marvin Gaye, is that
I don't care who it is.
Just as long as it's got some feel. And that's what we're talking about.
It's got some feel to it.
We're talking about feel.
We just lost him, Bobby Caldwell. For the longest time, people thought Bobby Caldwell was black. Okay. Tom Jones, when he first came out, Charlie Pride, they couldn't put his picture. They couldn't put his picture on the album. Music that has spirit behind it. I don't care if it's black, white, or green. As long as it's got something to say.
It's got some soul and some energy.
Yeah, as long as it's got that beat. Tell me that, and see, I'm a big Pink Floyd fan. Okay. Tell me you can listen to Pink Floyd and just sit there. Anybody who can listen to Pink Floyd or Santana.
Oh gosh, no. Yeah, you can't sit still with Santana.
Yeah, it got nothing to do with skin color. Can you play? Can you put a beat down? Yeah. Okay.
Great.
I can string different songs together from different genres and make it all fit.
Yeah.
Regardless of the color of the music, because the industry will have you thinking, oh, well, that's this and that. Back in the day, they called it race music. Okay. Everybody was in love with Elvis Presley, but Elvis Presley got his moves and his sound from a gentleman by the name of Roy Hamilton. I don't care.
That helps.
Music is music.
I hear that question a lot. I've heard that concern and that question asked a lot.
Well, that was part of the essence of BlackBeat. We're not trying to exclude anyone, but look, we're going to do this differently. It's not a fashion show, but we're going to put that little extra seasoning in there. We're going to put that extra spark to it so that, when you see them coming down and it's like, oh, everybody, I know a dude out of Philly who can wear a set of thigh-high boots like few women can and dance in them. Okay. But when you're moving to that music, regardless of who it is, when you're moving to that music and you're swinging to the music and you're getting beat to that music, I'm sorry, where does color come into that?
Right. Oh, I 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Music, good and bad. Stuff you're going to listen to, stuff you don't want to hear.
Got it.
You want them in there? Play some good music. Good music.
Tell me how BlackBeat starts. Where does
Okay,
who comes up with the
BlackBeat.
concept?
I
Where does it?
started into it and got
No.
sidetracked
I
as usual.
interrupted you. I'm sorry. I had that question specifically, and you brought it
In
up.
running around and going to different play parties and things, having munches. There was a gentleman out of Philly, Black Eagle, and he would have a munch up there. I'm sure that touches the nerve with mouth. Because we would go up there to the Cherry Hill Bar, and we would just kind of take over things. There was another man up there who had a small dungeon, Tats. He was a knife fanatic. But we're going all these places, and we're meeting people in different zones and different areas, and people are traveling. Philly would come to Baltimore. Baltimore would go to Philadelphia, or to, a bunch of us would line up. Hey, New York is going to have a munch. We would caravan to New York. People would come in from Chicago and Atlanta, all around. Okay. But the common theme was we're all still looking for that one event where we're not the oddity. Okay. And a bunch of the ladies finally started talking. Diamond out of Los Angeles, BG, who was in Baltimore, Lady Z, who's around Baltimore. They somehow or another got together and started talking, and they said, well, why don't we do our own? And it was like, they're doing theirs, why can't we start one? And we'll call it a family reunion. Well, what can we do? How can we blah, blah, blah? Well, as you know, I've got computer skills. I said, well, we can do a program, let's do a program. We couldn't call it BlackBeat because of the teen magazine, but they could call the event BlackBeat. Okay. And then let's put some feelers out and start talking to folks and say, hey, we're going to try to do this our way. Let's do it our way. So we started riding around. Lady Z and I was riding around the Baltimore area looking for venues, looking for hotels that didn't mind having a fetish event. The first hotel that we got a contract with was in New Carrollton, behind the radio station. And it was a Best Western or Western something or other. Nice hotel. And they didn't mind it, but we weren't a big event then. We're talking 100 people, maybe. We figured maybe 100 folks. We got bounced for a wedding. They took our date because there was a large wedding that was going to take over the hotel. So our date got taken over by a wedding. And the guy said, he was very apologetic. The manager was very apologetic, and then dropped a sizable sum of money on Z. They said, hey, look, I can get you another hotel. Here's some money to kind of, ease your, basically, here's some money, go away. We're going to make enough money that we won't notice this money. They sent us to the Ramada up in Hanover, and the crew there were just great. They were like, yo, because they were used to fetish events at that point. They had the swingers there. They had several other groups that would come in and take over. The swingers would bring in mattresses and take over the conference zones and just cover the whole floor with mattresses.
Like a big harem room.
And just had themselves a ball. So they were used to kinky folk. They were used to folks that were not exactly straight. Our only problem with BlackBeat was the first 3 BlackBeats that we had there. We didn't take over the whole hotel. So we had the Young Men's Christian Association across the hallway. We'd have classes. Not the first one, but the second one. First one, mine was down on the bottom level by herself. But the second one, there was folks wandering in the library going, what's this? And it's like, yeah, no, you don't want to be up in here. But the first one, we said, hey, we're going to have a family reunion. Y'all come. And, money was tight. So, I printed up the program. I printed up the programs. I bought a couple of industrial size printers, which are still in my basement, actually. and printed up some stuff because we went to some printers and they wanted more money than we had to do a 3 or 4 color program.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Yeah, that part. See, so it's like after we went to a couple of printers, I said, "Ma'am, look, I can get a hold of a couple of printers, help me get the paper, we can print them." Mom's got a couple of them, and we had some graphics people in the thing. Lady Coco, who is down in Belize now, I think she designed some of the. She was good with the artwork.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the graphics and stuff. So piece by piece by piece, we started putting this together and said, "Hey," then people start, the word kind of sort of started spreading. Said this actually might work, and the first one was like, and again, I had the music, so we put it up. We went to we rented a couple of buses. They rented a bus and bussed us down to the Crucible. And we took over the Crucible, told Frazier, "Hey, look, put this on," gave him a couple of tapes, and he liked the music and he said, "Okay." And we lit the Crucible up. Okay. And I was driving back and forth because I live just outside of DC. Why am I driving all the way up to Baltimore? You guys go up there, or unless she wanted me with her that evening or whatever. And so we were driving back and forth from the Crucible to the hotel, the BlackBeat Hotel, up there. And at the end of the night, everybody's like, I almost got, I pulled up because I knew Z would be hungry. So there was a place called Danny's. And I would stop and get Danny's chicken because I knew Danny's was open late. Got me a couple of boxes of chicken. Everybody's falling out of the bus. And here I come with hot chicken. And they're going, "Where'd you get that?" I'm like, "Danny's down the road." "Well, did you bring us some?" "No, this is for my mistress." "No, this is for my mistress. You're trying to get me killed. I know she's hungry." Okay. So I go upstairs and bring, after a couple of BlackBeats, it's like, "Are you stopping to get chicken?" Because she made me ride the bus one time because for the third, I think, trip, I had to ride. No, they were in vans. They didn't rent. I had to drive one of the vans. Mistake.
I was going to say, did you misbehave and she made you take the bus?
No, that year they couldn't afford the bus because we converted one of the bus drivers. One of the bus drivers came in and saw what we were doing, and he never left. That was the second one. The third year they couldn't afford the bus, so they rented a couple of vans. And she made me drive one of the vans. Now I've got a van full of kinky folk. I must have 12 people in there. And I'm like, I'm driving past where I normally would stop and get my chicken. And I'm going, "Damn it." And I don't know who it was that was sitting next to me. She goes, "What?" And I'm like, this would normally be where I would go get chicken. "Chicken? You mean that chicken you bring?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "We're driving past Danny's. So, who's interested in chicken?"
The whole bus.
The whole van raises their hand. So we go in and we all load up on chicken, and we cleaned them out. They had to close early. We bought all the chicken that they had left. And then we show up and we're all got chicken shoved in our face, and we almost got killed for it.
Wayward says, "I mean chicken." You're right there. Yeah.
It's fresh hot chicken, French fries, and people are going, "We're hungry, and only thing left is hotel food. And here you come with hot chicken." Yeah, it was a thing after that. Because it went from just me bringing chicken to my mistress to a van full of folks that I had stopped and we cleaned out their thing, their chicken. But BlackBeat was designed to be all inclusive. We don't care if you're gay, lesbian, blue, as long as you're cool, come on. It's a family thing. It's a family reunion. It is, we want you to come enjoy the event and not feel out of place, because not the scrubs, but the people who felt out of place of every place else. We weren't, the leatherati, we weren't the this and that, we weren't we just, we were the misfits, for lack of a better term, we were the misfits. BlackBeat was a collection of family that didn't fit other places, and some did, some, went to the other events as well, but BlackBeat was designed to make it comfortable for you to come explore your kink. We had a few classes, we had people that we all knew
Right.
from different areas. You had Mr. Smear, you had Lady Z, you had, BG knew everybody. I believe knew everybody. Miss Lash came out of Chicago. Goddess M knew a whole bunch of people. And just on and on and on. And then it was like, hey, now it's a party because guess what? I'm not looking at a bunch of strangers. I'm looking at people that I know and recognize, whether I know them personally or just, just on the fringe of. So I don't feel out of place. And then, okay, when, I'm sorry, but when you got Marvin Gaye and the Temptations and the OJs and because it was pretty much that first soundtrack was pretty much black. Now, you go through a couple of nights of play, and then you got breakfast the day after. And breakfast is everybody kind of going, oh, until they start singing Lift Every Voice in respect of the event. Then you got the boo hoo hoo and the tears are flowing and people are, and you had, what was his name? Jamal, I think. Brother out of New York. That boy had a voice like an angel. The young man had a voice like an angel. Excuse my expression, boy. He had a voice like an angel, and you could hear him over everybody else. And then, of course, when the chorus of voices start singing together, done. It was a lock at that point. We're gonna do this again, and and then it just kind of rolled forward. Hey, when are you gonna have BlackBeat? When are we gonna do this and this? They would start planning BlackBeat. It was in August. They'd start planning BlackBeat in January.
Okay.
Trying to get it together. Because it was the first couple, they purposely tried to keep it small. She tried to, the ladies tried to keep it small on purpose. It wasn't until it became a victim of its own phenomena, if that makes any sense.
I was going to ask.
Because we're at that point, the word has started to spread. Hey, we want to be a part of this. And we went from 100 to 150 people to 250 people. 1 year, the 5th year, and then we picked up some other people who were interested in seeing BlackBeat grow. There was a young lady by the name of Smarty Pants, and she did helped us blow up the get advertising.
What year was the first one, sir?
First year was 2003. I still have the shirt.
So you're talking 5th one, we're talking 2008 ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we had folks that were doing, as a matter of fact, I don't know if you can see this or not. This is from 2006. Let me hold it up so you can see.
Little to your left.
Okay.
There you go. That's perfect. BlackBeat 06. Nice.
And so they started designing different t-shirts for different years. The like I said, we had people that had talent. I thought I had, oh. Speaking of, here.
Mardi Gras 04, yeah. Raise it up just a little bit. Cool.
Great. So each year there was a different theme. for the t-shirts as well as the event. That was the year of Mardi Gras. Then we had one that was country and western, where everybody came out in country and western. 1 year was education. The shirts were all BlackBeat University. It was it became an event because it had its own niche. It had its own niche. It just and until it became such a thing that it was a victim of its own success.
How so?
Because then it's a target. It became big
Oh.
enough to be a target.
Yeah.
Then the outside forces got in. Hey, we can do, you know, this and that. We had some individual come in and started waving money around, and he had just enough money to be dangerous. Unfortunately, he was Black. Called himself Master So-and-so, had 4 little Barbie things behind him. And I'm saying Barbie, but that was what they looked like. They were different nationalities, but they were all about 5'6", 5'7", weighed about 110 pounds, and they worshiped their master. And he started waving money around, and the stress factor started to show. But what had been a family reunion
Turned into an event.
And then with it turning into an event, it turned into an event.
All the drama.
With all of the ills that come with it being an event. Well, meanwhile, you still got those 3 ladies trying to control everything and trying to maintain that family reunion feel.
Right.
Like I said, it started having the ills of it being an event.
That's
you know.
true.
But for 10 years, for a 10-year run, it was solid. It was just
Vice says a commercial event.
yeah. Then it became a commercial event.
It became commercial. Yeah.
Yeah. We could
And that's
go
what I
to-
meant by event. Yeah.
Yeah, we could. Well, I understood. We could go to New York and go to the stores in New York and mention BlackBeat and get a discount because they knew it was an event. Different places were finding out about it, and like I said, it became it became a victim of its own success. At one point, we had people from Germany, we had people from England, we had people from 5 different countries and 20 states. You know, it was a thing. You know, it was a phenomenon because it had never, you know, the family reunion got an extended family he hadn't counted on. You know,
Well, just hearing you all talk about Mama, Lady D, just hearing people talk about the event, the way it's talked about.
Well, by then we've got classes, we've got people coming in. He's a doctor now, he's a PhD now. Terrell would come in and teach flogging classes. You know, we were doing, that's where the Lady D, speaking of Lady D, I'm standing there one day and she's like, well, I stopped after connecting with Mom. I stopped looking down about being a sub or a slave. You know, I still thought slave was above my pay grade. And she was like, no, you know, this, and this. You're supposed to be proud of who you are and what you are. So with that new knowledge, you know, I lifted up a little bit. I'm like, hey, you know, I can be this and this and that. And Lady D said, well, how come you're not teaching classes? You don't want me teaching a class. Nobody's going to want to see that. And then I ran into a young man who, I ran into several individuals that thought that were getting bad information. They were getting bad information from some dominants. Oh, well, you know, once you're talking to me, they went back to my original days of searching for a dominant. you better be kneeling on rice when you're talking to me, when you're typing this to me, and stuff of that ilk. And they were being told that there were no, that a sub and a slave has no rights. You have, you're not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that. And they would come, I got approached by several folks. Well, is this right? No, it's not.
Not only no, but hell no.
Not only no, but hell no. You're not committed. I said, have you signed a contract? Have you done an agreement? No. Until you've done an agreement with this individual, you have just the same rights as they do. If it doesn't make sense in normal life, it's not going to make sense in here. Yeah, but he's told me this and that. And out of that came that word, the power of no. You can say no, no, thank you. No, it's not for me, and then dominants are funny creatures because they don't want you to know that they're lacking in an area or not.
Some of them. That would. Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
And
fair enough.
They would, because I was talking to, at that point, I'm talking to female dominants that are laughing because they had this thing called the Brotherhood of the Circle. We called it the Brotherhood of the Circle Jerk, but that's a whole nother thing. She said they call themselves the Brotherhood of the Circle, but half of them are stooping somebody else's, are stooping each other, and the other half are in my inbox wanting me to beat their ass. But they don't want you to know that because they're Master Domly Dom. No, I'm not naming any names. I'm just saying that they exist. So, and I would tell them, it works for dominants as well. If you're uncomfortable, and I knew one particular dominant, he was scared to death of his sub because I love her to pieces, but she's a handful on a good day. 110% masochist, 110% sadist, and when those two combined, she wanted what she wanted, and she wanted it then. He's supposedly be her dominant, but she would drive him to the brink.
Slave Jenna just said the one true way, and that's what I was thinking while you were going through that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me stop you right there because you have segued perfectly into where I want to go with this.
Okay.
I'm going to quote from your bio.
Uh-oh.
The last sentence. Many men who choose to openly submit are seen as weak, flawed, and hiding their true sexuality, as if to suggest that they may be a bi or gay person still in the closet. This perception is just wrong. If I have anything to say about that, it will not continue. You got a place to say it. Tell me about
it. Let's start with square one. Oh, I just ran across something, I think. Oh, here, before we get too farther afield.
Go to your right.
I can't see it, so.
You're good. A little to the right and back up a little. Right there.
2003.
Black Expressions, Alternative Taste. I love it.
I just caught the glimpse of it. Anyway, when I was serving Lady Z, and she had she liked to see boy stuff, boy things, and that's too much testosterone for me. I can't handle boy. But she kept trying, and she would put me in different outfits, we'll call it. And she picked up another male candidate because the female slave that she had was an ex-Marine, female ex-Marine. And she wanted nothing to do with no man, no dangly parts, ever, never, train, never going to meet, had nothing to do with sex. It was just, no, you got dangly bits. Yeah, but I'm this and this, I'm your, in the same family. Yeah, I don't care. The best that she would ever do was we finally became friends, and she would allow me to be in the room when they played. To the point that I got my ass kicked one night. But in that's another story. That's a whole
Squirrel.
nother squirrel. Okay. Um, this guy showed up. We all had lunch together, and I thought we were having a good time. And about just about the time things are winding down, he gets up and he says something to her, and he just, to the mistress, and he's gone. It's like, okay, do I offend? What's going on? And she said, you're too effeminate for him. And that has been the theme of my entire life. People automatically assume that I'm either gay on the down low or something because I don't talk black. Okay. My language has always been a problem. So, and then I get animated. I don't, I get animated when I'm excited. That evidently is a problem. And being submissive, they automatically think there's something wrong with me. So speaking to different people and different other individuals, you find out that they're all hiding something because they've been given some kind of poor information, or they react a certain way about being kinky. Because again, that whole religion thing, and there's a lady out of that, another squirrel, she was a deaconess in her church. I brought her directly to mom and said, fix this. Another squirrel. But anyway, I'm talking to people and they're going, but we thought, no, I'm not. But you seem like, and the bottom line is you find out that you're not alone. Because you're holding this on the inside, you're doing this. And it, people type for, they're exploring from me. I had to go out and go find stuff because I want to see, I want to experience it. Typically, you got people, I talked to this one guy for almost a year behind his keyboard. He would never come up behind the keyboard. I finally got him to come out to an event, come to find out he's also been talking to my mistress for a year. I get him to come to the old playhouse before it burned down. And he comes in and he's standing there at the doorway. And I'd seen it at the library time and time again, where people would come to that space where we'd have the library set up, and they would just stand there and just shake. Well, come on in. Well, it's the library and it's Mama Vi and it's this and it's that. Yeah, but come on in anyway, But then there were people, individuals, who felt that way about the lifestyle because they felt that they would be looked down upon or perceived in a certain way. And I'm sorry, my dad made me a man. He made me, but he wanted to be a good human, not just man, but a good human. I was strong enough in my own self that a lot of that stuff didn't bother me, but that part did, because you're perceiving this from over there instead of coming to me and asking. So I finally get this individual out. He sits there and I'm like, nobody's going to bother you. They know me. Nobody's going to attack you. And he's sitting there and he's hanging onto the table like he's afraid it's going to float away. And then Z comes over and goes, let's play. Yes, ma'am. Lay out the toy bag. She brought everything and the kitchen sink. The playhouse had good music. We were talking about music earlier. Laid out the towel, put out the toys, and we proceeded to dance. And at a certain point, I went back to the first time I ever played Squirrel. First time I ever played, I went to subspace. Straight into subspace. She's hitting me with flogger shots that would buckle the average person needs. And I was laughing. So this particular night, she struck a chord, the music was good, and I was just roaring with laughter, just having myself a ball, and so was she. We just had a ball that night. and we went through the toy bag. And at different points during the play, I would look over and his eyes got bigger and he started scooting back. His eyes got bigger as he scooted back. And the last time I saw him, he had this horrified look on his face. I mean, because she was nailing me, okay? And he had this horrified look on his face. By the time we stopped and came down, he was gone. Never saw him, heard from him again. Changed his profile, everything. Scared to death. Other things and people like that think they're alone. They're not. Nobody's going to look down on you because you're different. Okay, we're in this to be different.
It's kind of the whole point.
Yeah. But behind, pick one: culture, religion, politics, parenting. And like I said, the one young lady, she was having just a horrible time because she was in that gray area where she wanted to kind of sort of be, she was dating a trans man, trans woman. I'm sorry. My apologies. She's dating a trans woman. But she, they wanted to switch sides basically, and I'm like, do it. And she said, the church would freak. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be that, slap that mustache on, put that suit on, and you look damn good in the suit anyway, just like Corey looks good in the after, in the after 5. I should blank that one out. But be that person. Well, I can't do that. Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. Well, the church will do this and this and this and that and this and that. Let them. No, it's if it's for you, it's for you. Ask questions. If it's not for you, say no, thank you. The power of no again. Say no, thank you, and press on. If it makes sense out there, then it'll make sense in here. If it doesn't make sense in here, it won't make sense over there.
Simple enough.
But time and time and time again, we're running into individuals that think they're alone. And then when see the blessing of being in the library is that you can bring them books. Oh, you think you're the first? You think you're the first one at this? Here, boom, and you hand them a stack of books.
Here's a book from the 18th century.
Yeah, here's several books on blah blah blah. Ray Harrington calls The Sacred Kink. Has a book called The Sacred Kink. Great book, great primer for folks that are, hey, some of the biggest pervs out there are in the Bible. Well, it's this, here you go. Have you read this? Boom, and you start dropping stuff like that on them. Of no, you're not the first one. You're not alone. They got toys. They have found toys from the Roman Empire 5,000 years ago. Okay. You're not alone. You're not the first one. If you are the first one, you write the book.
Right.
And I just made up my mind, and it's not just Americans, but Black Americans in particular, are such prudes and so closed-minded that it's almost irritating at a certain point, because you have covered so much of the world's history. You have this, you've done all these things. Our culture has done all these things, and you're going to trip over somebody who's got leather or swinging a whip or a paddle? Give me a break. No. And stop picking on the people who do.
Amen. That was perfect. Absolutely perfect. That was my final point. I wanted to read that quote and have you preach, and you preached.
We browbeat our own to the point that a lot of folks just run away. Or there's a phrase that came out of the 70s. I don't know when, but it's not my original phrase, but it says each one teach one.
I've heard that one a time or two, I think.
Probably, each one teach one. You learned it, share it. It's not knowledge until you share it. You've got it. Okay, when you go away, what happens to the knowledge? Unless you share it, it goes away with you.
Great question right here. Are they prudes or are they uneducated?
Yes. A little bit of both, or possibly straight up both. Because they're uneducated, they are prudish.
Okay.
The educated people aren't. Case in point, Einstein. They just banned a couple of his books. He's on the back of they just banned a couple of Einstein's books. Okay. He's on the back of a couple of books in the library on quotes from him about kink. All right. When they're educated, when you know better, you do better. And that's from the poet, Maya Angelou. When you know better, you do better.
Yep. Wolf, how are we looking for questions?
A stunned silence.
we didn't have too many actually. Peg asked two. One was if you ever made it to the meatpacking district up in New York.
I've been through so much in New York now. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were down around the village and going to the clubs, then you were probably in
Village, Soho.
Yeah.
All down through there. Chinatown. Yeah.
Vi says Hellfire. That would be meatpacking. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually played there. It wasn't called Hell. It was still called Hellfire, but it was a modern day version. In the
vault,
early 2000s, 20. This is post BlackBeat, so 2010, 2015 ish. They had because I was with I had hooked up with Thorny, and we went because she was living in New York at the time, and I went up there, and they were in that district up on about the 10th floor, but it was a fashion show. They had couches and stuff in the middle of the room, and you played along the wall. But they said it was part of the old Hellfire building, club.
Okay. The other question Peg asked was, is there a song that brings back memories of a favorite scene? And what was the song and what was the theme?
Family Reunion by the OJs. I had broken up with my mistress. I have a friend who is she's the dominant. She's the dominant. So Sir is as hardcore as they come, but is also a friend. And saw that I was broken. And the song came on, and she stood me up very lovingly, put me on a cross, and gave me a cathartic flogging to Family Reunion. And I mean, thumping me pretty good. She had some good floggers. And when she saw me crumble, she grabbed me, sat me down, covered me in a blanket, and patted me on my head, and she said, you'll be okay now. I was sore for 2 days, didn't realize that she was hitting me that hard. But you know what? I was better.
Nice. Little catharsis.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That last question looks really good. Uncle Pulse, do you remember what you said to me at Unity Munch? And you said it because I was overprotective of you. We were in the dungeon there. I didn't say the
I don't
name.
remember.
I didn't say the name because I thought maybe you could guess who asked the question.
Yeah.
He knows who I am. I'm Matthew Cary. He said,
Yeah.
do you remember what you said?
No,
You don't?
I don't.
Okay. You said, Niecy, don't come running if you see me getting my ass beat. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, sir. And I walked away because I did not want, I knew what kind of person he was. I knew who he was because he and I met in 2009. We met online.
Yeah.
And he's been taking care of me ever since. He's been like a mentor to me. But yeah, that's what you said to me. And I just nicely took my little booty, put my head up, and walked on off, and ain't said nothing else because I did not want to see you get your butt whooped.
I forgive me, but that yeah, I do remember saying that. Now that you've kind of filtered through that,
brought it back, yeah.
Not to downplay that, but I've said things that I don't remember in the past.
I know, because you were in the zone.
Trying to be when I'm in that, when you're in that space. I said something to someone, and it was, they were fighting. They had been, they were getting beat up over being a switch. And switch in this community for the longest time has been a dirty word. Okay. And this person is a very capable switch. And what do I do? I said, why can't you be both? Just kind of trying to be. I refuse to be negative. I absolutely refuse to be negative. I'm not negative, Nanny, ever. You catch me being negative, slap me upside my head because I done lost my mind. And just trying to uplift the individual, the person. Fast forward to the next weekend reunion. I'm in there in the bar, and I'm getting, I don't know if I think I was having a drink or a meal, and comes running up to me and just grabs me, knocks me off the stool. You changed my life. You changed my life. You changed my life. What the heck are you talking about? And she went on to detail the fact that in her mind, I made it okay for her to be that person that she was already being. But she was agonizing over the fact that people were telling her, you can't do that. And I'm like, again, going back to, it's a stretch, but it's still the power of no. No, I want to be that person. You don't want me to be that person, then go over there. And forgive me for saying, but throughout time, I have fought that battle of people expecting one thing out of me and getting something that they don't expect. Either the language doesn't match, the mannerisms don't match, my hair doesn't match. I stopped dyeing my hair because I couldn't stand the dye. But then I felt more comfortable being me, just being me.
Yep.
I'm going to be a sub. And even dominants, male dominants have like, well, I'd be a friend with you, but you're a sub. Okay. What's the difference? Well, we like how you carry it, but you're a sub, so we can't be friends. That's a quote. That is a quote from a dominant.
Get the fuck out of here with that.
We can't be friends because you're a sub, because you're a slave, and I'm a dominant, so we can't be friends. I'm like, what about all the women? What about all the female dominants that I am friends or friendly with? What's
Well,
different?
that sort of leads into the question that
Yeah.
Slave Gina is asking. She said, going to go deep here. Do you think misogynistic culture within the lifestyle plays a role in why male S types are looked down upon as well as female masters?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. They, for the longest time, and I got good ears. I can hear things, that they may not want me to hear. And I'm listening to these men denigrate the women. How dare she call herself a master? How dare she call herself a dominant? Blah, blah. We can't cover a woman. This is from male masters, not just Black, but male masters. We were at an event that Mom used to take the library to. I'm not going to name a name, but before she moved to Evansville, we would pack up pretty much all of the library and take it to this event. And we walked into a room. Robbie and I walked into a room that we weren't supposed to walk into, and there was a bunch of male masters in there talking about how dark that particular event had become because there were so many Blacks there. But on the upside of that, like I said, I hate being negative Nanny. 1 or 2 years later, I got to watch Mom and another female dominant stand at the door of the library in tears because there was me and 5 Black masters standing in the hallway, all just kind of chit-chatting and having ourselves a good time. And I watched those 2 women bawl like babies because just pride, just absolute pride. So, okay.
Yeah. And I 100% agree with you there. The answer to that question is yes.
Yes. Oh yeah. It's better than it was, but it's far from being fixed. And it's still wrong on any level.
That's a good question, Peg. How and when did you meet Mama Vi?
Walked into the library as it was, because she had it in the back of, she used to travel with it in the back of the Matrix. Ask her about the Matrix.
I've been in the Matrix.
Okay. Walked into the library. My mistress had gone off to do something or just went to lay down, and I was wandering around at the very first BlackBeat. And I wandered into the library at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon after the events were starting to wind down, and never left. We got put out of the library by security at midnight when they came to lock the doors. And the guy was like, "You got to leave." And we're like, "But this is her stuff." We had been talking for a solid 8 hours and didn't realize it. I walked in the door and never left. And we left that night. We kept in contact. And then through, BlackBeat and this and that. And then when you're about 2 years later, she says, "Hey, we're going to set up at MSC." "What's MSC?" "We're going to set the library and we're going to do this and this and this and this. Why don't you come on down and help us set up?" Okay. Went down there and did that and been at it ever since. That was 2005. And just never left. Come on up. You mean come to your house? Yes. She was living in Willow Grove. And back then the old man was the greeter. Baskerville. I show up at the door and this massive dog greets me at the door. And I'm like, he's all right. And he just kind of, okay. And he just kind of leans over and just kind of lets me in. And then once he realized that I was okay, from that point on, whenever I would come in, because I would sit at her feet at the computer. And Baskerville would come in and go, phoom, and just lay that big body on me like, "Hi, you're back. Took you long enough." And then next thing you know, I'm like, "Baskerville, can we talk about this?" As I'm being pushed forward by that massive body. But yeah, once I was Baskerville, I was in. Yeah, that's the old man. He just cool beans. Cool beans. But yeah, 2003. We've been at this for 20 plus years.
03, you met Mama?
Uh-huh.
I met her 04 itself.
Yeah.
Her first words were, "You're crazy. You must have balls made of stone. When's the magazine come out?" So yeah, Cecil.
We talked about everything during that 8 hours. We talked like we'd known each other for decades.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome. Cecil, I'm gonna call on you. That what you said in chat needs to come out and say that.
I said it in the chat.
Oh, all right.
Busted.
All right.
Turn
him off.
One of the
Turn him
things
off.
that kind of pisses me off about, and you asked, so here you go.
Yep.
That's
why I pulled it up.
Okay. One of the things that does kind of piss me off is way back in the day that most of these MFers have never heard of. It was the female bodied pro doms that taught the guys.
Mm-hmm.
Because back in the day, they were the ones that were actually doing this shit. We were learning. We were stupid. We didn't know. They'd come out and they'd teach classes and they'd help us out. And they'd, and then I honestly don't know what the heck changed. Okay. I don't know what tide changed. Maybe Mama can talk to the idea, but at some point, all of a sudden, people making money on this they're taboo. They're making money on this. And, the pro doms kind of got snubbed a little bit. And I
didn't know there were male dominants for the longest time.
Right.
Until I started watching some of the Society of Janus and a couple of other, films that were of the time. I didn't even know they had male dominants.
Right.
First time I saw a man swing a whip, I was like, "There's male doms."
What's that boy doing with that whip?
Yeah,
that was such an important point. I'm sorry. Cecil wrote, they forget the female body pro dominants are the people that trained the male doms way back in the day. Yeah. Because the pro doms were the ones that were doing the work every day, and they were the best at doing what they were doing.
Risks.
And then Mama says those women were our protectors, and that is so important that I just wanted to pull that out. I'm sorry to interrupt and pull you up there, Cecil, but that's so important.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, that wasn't going to get by.
Good one.
I think the young, not the young folk, but the new generation need to know these things,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that'll help this perceived, well, you can't be a man if you're a sub bullshit. Because let me tell you something, being a sub, I have tried it. It's not easy. I took the easy route and I'm a dom.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand is that it takes strength. Mom, it was an education from Mom as well, but it takes strength to be that, that sub or slave. I almost got my ass kicked and it wasn't even my dominant. I watched one of the people who I consider to be a slave other than Mom. Okay. And she and her master were interacting, and he was one of the few male dominants that I knew that I fully respected. And he respected me because he let me cook in his kitchen. You didn't cook, and you just didn't walk into his kitchen and cook. And I would go up to upstate New York and help them clean their house. And, when they had events and things of that nature. They were down in Baltimore, and we were filming the DVD. If anybody doesn't know, hasn't seen Kinky, there's two of them. There's Kinky, and then there's The Family and Kink. The two DVDs, and we were filming the first one, Kinky. And we were going off to film, and she'd asked permission, and he'd given her permission. Not 5 minutes later, he came back with a whole litany of things that he wanted her to do. And if you didn't know her, you'd have missed it, because she looked at him, and he's 6'4", 6'5" ish. She's 4'11", or she says 4 foot 5 foot -1. Okay. What you saw was her get real still, real quiet. And she stood there. She didn't freeze, but she stopped. And she dropped her head and she said, "Yes, Daddy." I'm on the other side of the room, on the other side of the porch. I'm about to fall off the porch because I'm going, "But he gave you permission," and quietly, not out loud, but I'm geeking over there because this man that I respected has just switched up on her and told her, gave her some other stuff to do. I knew that there was no question she was going to stop and do that, and then we would go off. And then I don't know what triggered it. I don't know if it's, but he read her. And he said, "Oh, I had already given you permission to go film." And she said, "Yes, sir." Real quiet. And he said, "All right, go ahead and do your filming and then come back and get this done." "Okay, Daddy." Off we went. But I was about to get my ass kicked because I'm like, that ain't fair. That ain't right. You said she could do this, this, this. But yeah, you, and I've lost my entire train of thought. But it takes some serious power to do that. I got backhanded by my female daddy. And the only thing I did was break out in tears because she had done it, not because she'd done it, but because she did it in front of somebody that had become a mortal enemy. But I took it because, hey, I was wrong, and I had to take that correction. You just can't be a wuss and walk that path.
No, I think Vi has said the best slaves are dominant personalities.
Anybody that would call mom less than that, don't know mom.
Yeah. And on that note, I'm going to thank Pulse for being my second guest on the Leather Chronicles. And I'm going to remind everybody that coming up next month, we have Phil Boymeat Wolf and Joshua Hightower, co-creators of the Next Generation concept and movement.